I'm in the wash bay. I just finished the first pressure washing of the Firebird, and we're gonna have a quick look at it before we get it back in the tank. Now I'm contemplating what I'm gonna do with this thing, because all that gray primer came off, but the red underneath is pretty tough. So I'm wondering if I'm going to sand on it a little bit or use a more aggressive paint stripper to just loosen it up a little bit before we get it back in the tank. But let's have a quick look at it. So up front here, a lot of the black came off, but there's still a decent amount. You can see we have some very thick seam sealer all around here. And there's a few random patches that I don't quite understand why they're there. You can see how thick that was. I don't think this was factory seam sealer, because you can see there's some welding wire still connected underneath. In the floor, you can see all the floor pans were replaced, And I believe there was seam sealer over those welds right there. You can see this one was replaced. You can see we got some rust coming through in quite a few areas. And you see on the other side, on the passenger side, those floor pans were replaced. Got some daylight coming through on the firewall there. You can see the pinstripes here that were covered up go along the whole way. And there was filler over this crack in the T-top. That all came off. You see that quarter pretty much completely covered in paint still. For some reason, this middle section came off, but nothing else did. We got some more seam sealer. You can see this plug that was in the trunk. I took that out because this was holding a lot of fluid, but it was covered in seam sealer and undercoating, so I couldn't get it out and didn't even know it was there before. Kind of figured there was a plug there. Some rust in the trunk. You can see we had some filler here. This was all sanded down. Filler, we got some holes that the filler was in. We got quite a few layers. We had the primer, the red. We have two different colors of red. More primer underneath, and it looks like there's red underneath that primer too. But I'll update you guys in a minute or two and see what I'm gonna do with this thing before we get it back in the tank. It was nearing the end of the day, so I ended up not even doing anything to the car, no sanding or more aggressive chemicals. So we're gonna see how this second layer of paint reacts to this alkaline in a little bit when we pull it up. It's gonna be in here for about a day and a half, and then we're gonna pull it up and give it another pressure washing. So we just finished the second pressure washing of the Firebird, and as you can see, a lot of the stuff came off. We have a little bit of black left. A lot of the seam sealer came off too. I don't even think I'm going to sand on this or anything. I think the chemical is going to do the work. We'll put it in one more time and it's going to be ready for acid. You can see we got a little bit over the flares here, but that is definitely going to come off. A lot of the stuff that wasn't even bubbled up came off. So one more dip will definitely do it. You can see we had all that thick seam sealer and that's coming off pretty well. I was a little surprised. I did find what used to be a brush in there with a wooden handle, and as you can see, that's what happens when you dip wood. Pretty gross. But I'm gonna get this thing detailed a little bit, pick some of the seam sealer out, just help it along the way, and we're gonna put it back in the tank. See you guys in a little bit. So we ended up pulling it out of the alkaline, pressure washing it. It wasn't even worth the video because everything pretty much came off in the tank. There was still a little bit in the floor. So here you can see we're lowering it in our acid bath to take care of all this rust. It's gonna take about 2 days in here. But the thing is, I only have one acid pressure washing video of this car. And it's the first one, which is the best one, so you get to see all the rust be taken away. I think this one took a total of 2 dips, but for some reason, my video of the final pressure washing of this car was completely deleted, and I have no idea where it went. So this is actually pulling it out after the second dip, and you can see how clean it is. But when we go over to the wash bay to pressure wash it, it's gonna look a little dirtier because the rust and stuff is still on it. Here you can see we're taking the car over to our alkaline bath. This is to neutralize all that acid. It remains in here for about 10 minutes, and that takes care of any chance of flash rusting. And after we pull it out of here, we'll go over to the wash bay for its final pressure washing. The 1980 Pontiac Firebird is all finished up and down to bare metal. This was a pretty sweet dip. The paint came off fairly easily. There were a few layers, but in the end, it finished up really nicely. The rust, there was a decent amount of rust, but it wasn't anything crazy. There's still a lot of good metal here. But let's have a quick look at this and see what we're working with. So up front here, you can see this metal finished up super nicely. Firewall looks really solid. Up here, we do have some rust holes coming through in a few areas and some pretty decent pitting. And on the opposing side, you can see those pinholes coming through right there. Now, I can't remember, but I believe this is the only T-top car I've ever done. And does it look sweet, bare metal? You can see right here, it's dented up a little bit. Have a look at these floors. The floors were completely replaced in patches. You could see all the welds along there. And just overlapped over the original floor, it looks like. Get a closer look. You can see we got some rot right there coming through. And on the other side, we'll get a closer look at that side when we get over there. But look how nice this metal is. Have a look at the quarters. This quarter had a few spots cut out of it. You can see right there. And back here. All looks pretty solid back here. This is where the worst of the rust was on the rear end. It's chewed up pretty good in a few areas. Piece of something there. Have a look at the trunk area. Few pinholes coming through, a lot of pitting, but nothing too crazy. Have a look at the passenger side quarter. I gotta scoot past here. Running out of room. Passenger side quarter is nice and straight, as you can see. Looks really solid. We got some brazing back here on both sides. I forgot to show it on the other side. Rockers look solid. Really the only thing is the floor. Everything else looks really good. All right, and back to the front. This was a really fun car to do. I really enjoyed it. And I always love when a car just finishes up so nicely like this. Nice and shiny. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really appreciate every single one of you. And I'll see you at the next car.